Thank you so much for having me. I'm honored to be here to moderate this panel. My name is Jessie. I'm calling in from the States. My pronouns are he, him. I'm going to go ahead and pass the mic off to our panelists and allow them to introduce themselves, and then we'll get into some discussion questions. So to keep it on the Zoom, Ghaith, do you want to go ahead and start?
Yeah, hey everyone, my name is Ghaith. I'm Palestinian. I'm an ex-activist that's been hoping to be taking a lifelong break from activism, but doesn't look like it's happening. If you're Palestinian, it's never ending. So I was an ex-activist and board member with Al-Qaws for sexual and gender diversity in Palestinian society. I was a member of Al-Qaws for about 10 years, and during that time, we also, a group of us co-founded different groups like Palestinian Queers for BDS and Pink Watching Israel that we'll be talking about later. Nice to be here.
Thank you so much. I can't see who else is there, but you both want to go ahead and introduce yourselves.
Hi, my name is Elias Rizek, he, him. I'm a cultural practitioner and curator from Palestine. In 2020, I founded an independent cultural space in Ramallah named the Mustawda, which at its core was tried to champion a participatory model for cultural work, which then led to a lot of very interesting ways that communities organized around us, and eventually became a space for the queer community in Ramallah to congregate.
Hi. Okay. Hi everyone. My name is Ghaith or Ray. Pronouns are he, him. I'm a Palestinian, but born in Germany, so I'm part of the diaspora. My family was expelled in 1948. I did, however, spend my teenage years living in Qatar. So I was surrounded by a lot of Palestinian people, but as well, just more generally, other Arab cultures that were quite conservative. I am a co-founder of an academic concepts agency called The Advisory End, which I founded with my mentor and previous lecturer at university. We help educational institutions, but also more industry-related institutions with training programs and creating bespoke courses for their students. That also led to my second job as associate lecturer at London College of Fashion. Thank you.
Thank you all so much for introducing yourselves and for being here and sharing space with us today. I want to start off by allowing folks to speak about what does queerness look like for Palestinians, and if you want to go ahead and include this next question in your response as well, how does that differ to the queerness we know in the West? And anyone's welcome to start.
I can start, I think. I think that, well, first of all, queerness is a different experience to everyone everywhere. It's like there's no one way of experiencing queerness in the UK, since we're talking about the UK. Someone from like a religious Christian family or a religious Muslim family or a religious Jewish family's experience of queerness is not the same as someone whose family is more accepting. It's not in London, it's not the same as in a little town, etc. And the same is in Palestine. There is no one experience of queerness. Palestinians from different families will have different experiences. Palestinians living in the West Bank versus Palestinians living in the 48 versus Palestinians in Gaza, they'll all have different experiences of queerness. And I think, again, when we're talking about the West, it's not a dichotomy, since there is no one way of experiencing queerness in the West. But I think what's important to note here is that throughout our work with Al-Qaws, and is that for us it was important to see what queer activism means in Palestine, because there was one sort of hegemonic way of queer activism that was being shoved down our throats, which is, where is your pride parade, how many Palestinians are out, etc. And it was important to us to know that this, while this might work for certain communities in the West, this is not what works in Palestine, and it was important for us to redefine that, and maybe that's something that we can discuss more later on, but it's just important to note that because we have differing experiences of queerness, queer activism should look different in different places and to different people.
I would very much echo.
Thank you so much, Raim.
Sorry. Yeah, I would very much echo what was said in the sense that there is no monolith for being queer, just like there is no monolith for being Palestinian, British, however you identify. There's no one monolith for that. I would say the queer Palestinian experience is, at least speaking strictly from, I guess, my lens, and I do, recognize that that's a privileged lens and that my family is Muslim and accepting. I will say there is an aspect of, like in the West, I think it's very important, or not very important, but there's a lot of emphasis placed on people wearing their identity on their sleeve. So people being out and making a statement with their queerness. That isn't necessarily appropriate or valid for all identities, specifically in cultures such as ours, My experience is that, for some time I struggled with my identity as a Palestinian and queer because I was under the false pretense that, or I was under the false impression that those were two conflicting things. And that shattered for me when I came out to my mother and other family members. It did take some time and some conversations to educate them and, assure them of my safety, which was really their main concern. It was like, how's the world going to receive you? What is work going to look like for you? And at the same time, they were a little bit concerned about a sort of Western whitewashing of my identity, where that my queerness would distance myself from, my Palestinian culture. However, when I did come out, I feel personally that I've grown closer to my culture. One, because I felt that there was some acceptance there, but two, at least from my family immediate circle. But also hearing my family's concerns about being westernized, so to speak, kind of lit a fire under my ass, to try and understand what it actually meant, what it actually meant to be queer in Palestine. I do have other queer Palestinian friends whose experiences were very different. They might harbor more resentment than I do, and I can't say that isn't valid. I haven't lived their life. But yeah, I guess when comparing it to the West and how people place an emphasis on being out and proud, and in that sense, I feel like oftentimes for Western queer people, it can be part of their identity in a way that is more forthcoming and upfront, whereas for myself and I think other Palestinians, being queer is just an aspect of our personality that makes up who we are, in a sense.
Under Israeli occupation and all of the challenges and humiliations that come along with that, but as well there's the unique ways in which your queerness intersects with that occupation and the unique ways in which the occupation will target one's queerness. So for example, there's been a lot of cases where individuals are specifically targeted by Israeli intelligence services over their queerness. So to be Palestinian and queer is to kind of have one's challenges multiplied.
Sorry, I just want to add to that in that, being queer and Palestinian is intrinsically political. So with that comes a whole set of experiences that, again, there's no monolith for, but that do play into, I guess, our identity as people of color who are queer. Thank you.
Hi, did you want to add something?
Yes, I think I want to add something on that, and I agree. I think one of the key differences, if that is, to others who don't have intersectional identities or intersectional struggles is that within Palestine there is this intersectionality of being queer but also being Palestinian, living under occupation, and having all of these. What does it mean for all of these to be interconnected and for us to be fighting against these systems of oppression together and seeing how they connect? And one of the key documents, I think, that was instrumental in shaping how we understood our work and where we stand was the Kumbahi River Statement. And for those who don't know, the Kumbahi River Collective was a collective of queer, lesbian, feminist black women in the States that ran from 1974 to 1980. And I'm just going to read a small excerpt from that statement. So, although we are feminists and lesbians, we feel solidarity with progressive black men and do not advocate the fractionalization that white women who are separatists demand. Our situation as black people necessitates that we have solidarity around the fact of race, which white women, of course, do not need to have with white men, unless it is their negative solidarity as racial oppressors. We struggle together with black men against racism, while we also struggle with black men about sexism. And in Palestine, that is exactly the case, is that we struggle together as Palestinians against the occupation, yet we still struggle within our societies against notions of queerness and how these are formed. And I think it was really essential as, I'm not sure, because I can't see who's speaking, someone mentioned that Palestinians are usually blackmailed for their queerness. Early on in our work, we understood that one of the key images of Palestinian queers in Palestine within our society is that we are either westernized and are enacting a Western agenda to dismantle the family structures, etc., or that we are collaborators working with the Israeli government and hence sort of stripping that Palestinianness away from us. So it's really important for us to embed the queer struggle within the Palestinian struggle and to reclaim our Palestinianness and our role within the Palestinian struggle as queers. Which is something that continuously gets, like our agency is something that continuously gets questioned by the Israelis, and that's one of the ways in which pinkwashing works, which I think will be the next question. So I'll leave that for them, but it's also continuously being questioned by our people in Palestine, and it's important to frame what we do as Palestinians within the Palestinian struggle, but also with our people as being queer and carving that space out for ourselves within the Palestinian struggle, but within our societies as well.
Thank you so much to all of our panelists for engaging so thoughtfully with that question. We're already kind of naturally segueing into it, so I want to bring up the concept of pinkwashing, which, as folks may know, is a form of propaganda used by the Israeli regime to promote queer inclusivity, and I'm sure we'll hear more about the consequences of that. So I'm curious to hear why you think pinkwashing is so important to Israel. Why is that a branding tool they've used? How does it affect queer Palestinians, and what are the organizations you're a part of or the communities you're a part of doing to push back against Israel's pinkwashing?
I'm happy to take the lead. I'm sorry, I do have notes, so I'll be looking at those. To start, I mean, it serves Israel's interest to try and distance itself further from the Arab nations surrounding it, and Israel continuously tries to align itself with the West in a sense, or in a way where Western individuals, Western leaders can kind of look to Israel as, again, this like false idea of this shining beacon for democracy and liberal ideals in the Middle East, surrounded by these savages that just don't have the same value for human life and equality. So I think pinkwashing serves Israel primarily in that fact, in that sort of narrative where Palestinians, if they're queer, are victims of their Palestinianness, of their culture, of their people, and that Israel is this shining beacon for queer people all over the world to kind of find equality. Specifically when it comes to Palestinians, there's this, and I've seen this in the news a few times now, where there'll be something might happen in the West Bank or in Gaza that is a homophobic hate crime, and immediately, without contextualizing the issue, Western media seems to favor a narrative that highlights that Palestinians are scared. Palestinians are trying to escape. They want to go to Israel to find this like solace, as if Israel is this, beacon for equality, and that queer people in Israel don't face any sort of discrimination, which is false. Not just for Palestinians, although they do face, we do face added layers to the sort of discrimination that we might face within Israel if we are queer and Palestinian. But queer Israelis themselves aren't necessarily safe in Israel. There have been terrorist attacks in Israel that have killed queer people, queer Israelis, queer Jewish people. So I think pinkwashing serves Israel in a sense to kind of dilute the water a little bit about what the situation is like, one, on the ground in Israel for queer people, but two, it paints this picture of Palestinians as victims that need to be saved by this white colonizer, essentially. I'm sure there's more that people can say, so I'll pass on.
The way that I typically view pinkwashing, it's kind of an insidious way to build identity politics, to establish an us and a them, to establish a binary of those that we support and those that those that will blindly support and those that will blindly overlook or disregard or view as less than. So this strategy of pinkwashing by building up Israel as, these phrases that we've all heard quite widely: Israel is the only democracy in the Middle East, Israel is a safe haven, Tel Aviv pride. These are all, in my view, mechanisms to make Israel as a government and the Israeli public seem quite relatable to a Western audience. These become the in-group for the Western European audience, and then therefore making Palestinians the out-group. And as an out-group, it becomes much easier to dehumanize, to subjugate, to overlook.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's important, like when we talk about pinkwashing, it has two aspects. And one of it is a rebranding campaign that was started in the early 2000s to sort of rebrand Israel as this sort of progressive, and as my co-panelist said, it sort of works on this dichotomy of the liberal Israelis and the barbaric Palestinians. But it's also extremely important to look at it as a method, as colonial violence, and not only as a branding campaign. Why colonial violence? Because for one, it sort of takes away any Palestinian agency on the ground. by showing that, the Palestinian community is pathologically homophobic, and there's nothing you can do about that, and your only solution is to go to your savior, who are the Israelis. And it has this extremely dangerous, absolutely surreal, bizarre way where the Israeli stops becoming the oppressor and all of a sudden becomes the savior. And it's as if these rockets they're firing on Gaza will stop if you're queer. It has a queer sensor. It's like, oh, you're queer, here you go, glitter ball. No, that's not how occupation works, and that's not how this happens. Again, there's this idea that Palestinians are seeking asylum in Tel Aviv, the queer haven. Again, Israel does not give permits or asylum to Palestinians who they ethnically cleansed in 1948 from Tel Aviv. This is not how occupation works. While some Palestinians might escape their families, because let's face it, we have homophobia in the Palestinian society, and this is not what we're saying, that we don't have that. It's just what this is doing, it's creating this image that Palestinians don't have the agency to change within their society, that Palestinian queers do not exist in Palestinian society, and if they do, they're only victims. And it affects the Palestinian queer psyche in that many Palestinians end up believing that and end up thinking that if they escape to Tel Aviv, they'll be safe, and then they're faced with the reality that they're not getting permits, that they're living there illegally, that they're usually living on the streets, trying to find a way to make some money, etc. And so if we see it like that, as a way that sort of takes away Palestinian agency, then anti-pinkwashing, it becomes extremely important to look like anti-pinkwashing becomes a way of sort of raising the voice of Palestinians. For us, when we were working against pinkwashing, one of the main issues was that we're reclaiming our voice, because our voice as Palestinian queers was being stripped away from us, used by the Israelis to legitimize what they are doing to us as Palestinian queers and to the rest of our society, and it was stripping us away from the society as if Palestinian queers are one thing and the Palestinian society is something that's completely different. So having said that, if 12, 13 years ago, when we first started working against pinkwashing, we started pinkwashing Israel, we started writing statements, and we started going on talks and tours, etc. If you told us that it would be queers who are leading the marches in the US, in the UK, it would be the Dyke Project who were doing that, the London Trans Pride would publish that amazing statement they published, etc., etc., and Ghaith Hilal, I think, published an article, I wouldn't believe you. When we started doing that work, Israeli pinkwashing propaganda was working everywhere. All these places would have Israeli contingents, all the gay magazines would be publishing images of Israeli buff soldiers covered in pride flags, etc., as if this is something that's extremely good for the world. So to be here today is absolutely amazing, and it shows that the work over the last decade has achieved something. But again, there is something that's I'm noticing in a lot of these spaces, is that the voices of Palestinian queers on the ground is being stripped away from them again, where the knowledge that is shared about pinkwashing is being centralized in the West. So we have people publishing articles from Sarah Schulman, who's amazing, and I love, we worked a lot together, and she used her platform to raise the issue, the narratives that we were pushing forward, Jeffrey Puar as well, etc. Well, all of these are really important. It's really important to notice that pinkwashing works on stripping away Palestinian agency, and to truly work against pinkwashing, we need to focus on Palestinian agency against all of this, and we need to raise the voice of Palestinians on the ground as well. and not only the Palestinians in the diaspora or others who are working against pinkwashing.
Thank you, Ghaith, for that beautiful answer, and to our other panelists as well. There's so much that I want to highlight in what you shared, but I think what's really standing out to me is this idea of pinkwashing as white colonial violence. And you spoke about how that plays out in a few ways, right? Creating these false dichotomies of, Palestinians stuck in their ways and accepting Israelis, waiting with open arms, which of course we know is not only untrue, but a complete distortion of occupation and of the reality of oppression. So I want to hear a bit from our panelists in the last few minutes we have. Why is it important to resist pinkwashing? How can we do so in our areas in the West without, like you said, taking agency and taking voice away from Palestinians on the ground? I'll start there.
I think first and foremost, it's important for a Western audience to, or not just in the West, but people who aren't Palestinians who might be engaging in these conversations, to educate themselves, to understand, what is it like actually on the ground for Palestinians living in the West Bank and Gaza. There's a lot of misconception that I've heard, even from friends of mine, asking whether or not there's a death penalty for queer people, and that isn't the case. I mean, in the West Bank, being queer is decriminalized. Doesn't necessarily mean it's safe, because there is homophobia in the community, but at least from a legal standing, there is no such thing as a death penalty for queer people, not in the West Bank, but also not in Gaza. But in Gaza you might be imprisoned, but that's certainly not the death penalty. And right now that's also kind of, I find it a little bit ridiculous when people focus on queer rights in order to kind of, not justify, but to ignore the fact that Palestinians are dying at the hand of Israel. As opposed to because they're gay and being hunted down by their community members, which is also not as common as Israel likes to highlight. I think another thing that's important to recognize is that the whole queer liberation movement was a struggle against organized forces like the police. It was by people of color, trans people, queer people, indigenous people. So to try to remove the narrative from that in Palestine seems a little bit ridiculous to me, because at this point today we are fighting the same fight. We're fighting an oppressive regime. We're fighting a military, the same military that will be on banners promoting Tel Aviv Pride, is in Palestine gunning down people as we speak. So yeah, I think it's important to recognize that the fight for liberation, not just within queer circles, but also just for any marginalized community, is one that is continuous. Is one that wasn't just that didn't just take place in the past. And now there's queer liberation, and the world has to kind of catch up. It's an ongoing process that Palestinians are currently engaged in. But on top of that, we're fighting a huge propaganda machine. So allyship is important. It's also important to ask questions. It's important not to be afraid to ask those questions. I've got friends that I'm proud have educated themselves, but have also come to me and asked for resources and things like that. And I think we need to encourage that as well. But yeah, keep platforming Palestinians as well, I think, is one of the more important things. I'm honored to be here today, but there are so many Palestinians, so many queer Palestinians who are creative and who add so much value to conversations like this that aren't here with us today. Granted, I don't know many in London, but I've got a few around the world who are doing amazing work. It is beautiful to know that representation is there. But the representation alone needs to be, the representation alone isn't enough. We need to make an effort to hear from Palestinians, hear their voices, and continue to platform them. But yeah, that's my take, please. Thank you.
Building on that, I think there's a very important reframing that needs to occur when discussing queer Palestinians. So sure, queer Palestinians are facing a million and one challenges, but that doesn't make us a disempowered, just kind of fully brutalized community. We're just, because that very much serves the pinkwashing narrative of us needing or waiting for this savior. Queer Palestinians are doing all right. We're mobilizing. We're creating spaces. We're creating our own safety. We're like there's a very vibrant queer community like all throughout Palestine. Like we're not just silently waiting for something to change. We're taking things into our own hands, and I think centralizing those queer Palestinian voices as the mobilizers of this movement, I think is crucial. We're not disempowered. We're doing it.
Yeah, absolutely, and I absolutely agree with that. Like Palestinian queers on the ground and all over the world, we have the agency to change what's happening. We have the power to actually enact the change that we need, and we're not waiting for a savior. But what we want from you is to help and raise the voice and like raise Palestinian voices basically on the ground. We're not waiting for people to save us or to come up with new narratives, etc. We've done all of that, we've done all the work. We just need you to raise that voice and share it as much as possible because the counter narrative is strong. And I think in terms of anti-pinkwashing, while it's really important to be doing the work that we're doing now, but Pride season will be upon us very soon. And I'm pretty sure that the Israeli machine will be trying to push their propaganda as much as possible. There will be ads everywhere for Israeli Pride. If you are, if you have connections with a magazine that's publishing those, contact them. If you are part of an organizing committee for Pride anywhere, and you see that there's going to be an Israeli contingent, fight against that. Talk to people. Talk to people everywhere, just wear a Palestine badge the next time you go to a queer party. Just keep having these conversations, keep having these discussions and raise Palestinian voices. And on that sense, I'd like to reiterate that the Culture's website, even though it's a bit old, but it has a plethora of information and of material about pinkwashing, Aswat, who is Palestinian, lesbian group based in Haifa. They have some information on their website as well. Palestinian Queers for BDS, even though that website is extremely old, it's still running. Pinkwashing Israel is not there anymore, but look those up, read about them, and just share the knowledge and make sure that Palestinian voices are centered in any pinkwashing, anti-pinkwashing work you do.
I think we're just about at time, so I want to thank our panelists so much from the bottom of my heart for sharing their time and perspectives with us today. I want to extend gratitude to the space for facilitating this panel and for having me. Remind folks to, as Ghaith said, continue engaging with this work. Do explore those websites, look up pinkwashing, watch documentaries, listen to queer Palestinian voices, and like our panelists said, continue to amplify them. The narratives are already there, they just need to be shouted from the rooftops. So with that, I will pass the mic back over to our hosts. Thank you so much again to all of our panelists. Wishing everyone safety and lots of solidarity.
Thank you so much, guys. Thank you so much, Jessie, Elias, and Ray. It's been a pleasure to have you all. And thank you all for listening. And as everybody said, please amplify the Palestinian queer voices, and not only the queer voices, all the Palestinian voices. They need as much as possible, more now than ever. Okay, so thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of the day.